Oh, the joys of pregnancy, especially in the third trimester when your fingers swell up, the ring gets stuck on your finger, and you have to have it cut off. The ring gets all bent out of shape, comes apart, and is pretty much unwearable for the foreseeable future. This is just one of the many side effects that come from literally growing another human being inside of your body. The bands in this bridal set are supposed to be straight, but if you see here, it's all wavy. I'm going to straighten these bands, but first I need to clean the ring. At one point, these two rings were soldered together. My client would like to have them separated, to be two rings again. In order to do that, I need to find the original solder points. I check the side, nothing there. Another common spot is underneath at the top. Again, no solder. The only place where the solder remains is here on the side. You can see it between the two rings, holding them together. Now it's time to separate these two rings. I do this by slowly heating up the area with the existing solder. When it begins to flow, I can pull these rings apart. Now that the rings are separated, they're going to be a lot easier to work with. The first thing I'm going to do is focus on the shape of the rings. Right now they're all spread out and they still have that wave shape in them. It's not even close to laying flat. In order to straighten out these rings, I first want to make them round again. I'll take my soft ring bending pliers and start to pull down. I focus the majority of my bending on the bottom third of the ring. This is the area that is solid 14 karat white gold without any diamonds. In order to create a tighter seam, I'll take my jeweler's saw and I'll run the blade through the seam. I'll then take the ring and I'll solder it closed by flowing solder into the seam. Afterwards, I'll take a cylinder burr and I'll run it on the inside of the ring. This will make it nice and smooth for rounding. Naturally, the ring is very much an oval shape due to me bending down the sides. In order to round it out, I'll throw it on a ring mandrel and start to work it down the mandrel. After it feels pretty tight on the mandrel, I'll grab my rawhide mallet and start to pound away. As I'm pounding on the ring, I try to avoid the spots where the diamonds are set. I'll continue to hammer the ring, while pulling down with my left hand simultaneously. I'll keep going until the ring is virtually rounded out. Once the ring is round, I'll focus on straightening it. This is done by placing the ring on a metal block, taking my metal hammer, and tapping it. I'll keep hammering down until there's no more gap between the metal block and the ring itself. This is the point in the project where you're finally starting to see some success. The ring looks like a ring again. All that being said, there's still a few very important steps to complete. We now need to address the finger size. This ring hasn't been worn in over 2 years. The original ring size is reading at 4.5, but my client would now like it to be a size 5. So let's just jump on into sizing this ring, except I forgot, there's another ring. This one's going to need to get caught up as well. So with the engagement ring, we're going to do basically the exact same thing we did with the wedding band. I can practically hear you guys begging to see all of these same steps performed over again. But for the sake of time, let's go ahead and fast forward things a little bit. We'll start by bending it down, filing, more bending down, soldering the ring together, throwing it on a mandrel, more hammering, checking the roundness. Now everybody wake up because there's some diamonds missing. What exactly happened here? Well, with all the bending down, rounding out, the diamonds will inevitably become loose. But worry not about the missing diamonds. They simply fell down into my bench pan. I'll collect them and reset them shortly. So now we have 2 rings that have been rounded out and soldered back together. They've also been straightened. So what comes next? You might remember we need to size both of these rings up to a size 5. I'll take my jeweler's saw and run the blade right through the original seam. Using my ring mandrel as a sizing gauge, I'll slide the ring up to the size I need, in this case, size 5. In order to size a ring larger, I'll have to add some gold to the ring. In this case, I'll be using a piece of sizing stock, 2 by 2 millimeters. I'll slide that piece of gold right above and parallel to the ring. I'll then take some tweezers and score the length I need to cut. Then I'll clamp down the piece of sizing stock, and then use my jeweler's saw to cut that piece exactly where I scored it. I don't want the small piece to go shooting across the room when I cut through, so I'll clamp it down and then wiggle the big piece free. For good measure, I'll run my file over the piece to make sure the seam is nice and tight. I'll then take the new piece of gold and drop it down into the existing ring, literally bridging that gap. You want to make sure there's no added tension in the ring when you do this. Now we're going to solder the ring together. I'll first add some flux down into the seams. This aids the soldering process. It helps the solder flow all the way through and where it needs to go. After I've sized the first ring, I'll move on to the second. Ring sizing has become sort of robotic for me these days. I've sized a lot of rings in my life. According to this Instagram post, I sized 1,363 rings in 2016. And while I'm super grateful for those years of sizing thousands of rings, I'm certainly grateful I don't have to do it anymore. I started Modern Goldsmith as a way to more express myself artistically. My main focus these days is custom work, and I also love making videos like this. If you enjoy what I do, consider subscribing. Unless, of course, you'd rather have me go back to sizing rings for a living. In that case, you can leave. But seriously, don't leave, stay. Jumping back into the task at hand, I'm using the cylinder burr again to smooth out the inside of the rings. The new piece of gold that was soldered in will need to be blended with the original ring. I'll do this by using my file. The trick to filing is to follow the contour of the ring, almost like you're following through as well. You don't want to create a flat spot in the ring. After filing, I like to use these sanding wheels to blend everything together more smoothly. Now it's time to transform the bench a little bit by removing the bench pin. This will be replaced by my stone setting table. Sitting on the table is this vise. I'll use this to keep the ring in place. I use it for stone setting, replacing stones, tightening stones, pretty much any time I need to keep a ring tight and secure while I work on it. With the ring secure, I'll be replacing the diamonds that fell out. After the stone is dropped in, I'll try to straighten it the best I can. I'll then take my beading tool and apply pressure to the diamond. I want to do this so I can pop the diamond back into place. I'll do the same thing with this second diamond and any other diamond that needs to be replaced. I'll drop it down into the seat, straighten it, and then use pressure to pop it back into place. This is a beading tool. It is used to push the prongs down over the diamonds. The metal tips on these beading tools are all interchangeable. Basically, you want to find the size that fits perfectly for the ring. You want your beading tool to cup just over those tips. Then using pressure, I push down, thus tightening the diamonds. I'll go over each individual prong or tip, one by one, pushing the gold down until the stone is tight. Due to how much I had to round this ring out, virtually every stone is loose in some capacity. After I go over each individual tip, I'll take some tweezers and I'll test the tightness of the stones. If I find any that are still a little bit loose, I'll go back with my bead tool and tighten it down some more. I'm also going to inspect the center diamond. As we can see, the 6 prongs are asymmetrical. They're going to need to be straightened. I also want to make sure that the center stone is tight. Round diamonds are pretty hard to break. That being said, you never want to rush this step. You want to take your time. Make sure that you're not putting too much pressure on the center diamond. And of course, I didn't forget to tighten down all the diamonds in the other ring. Almost done. To recap, we bent the rings back into shape, soldered them back together, sized them up, and then we also tightened down all the stones and replaced the ones that fell out. If you've made it this far in the video, I'm going to buy you a basket of fries someday. And while the repair is 95% done, I truly believe that it is the last 5% that makes the most difference. Of course, I'm talking about polishing, finishing, putting the final shine on a ring. It starts with a lap. This restores the nice crisp edges on the sides of the ring. I then move over to inside ring polishing. Some people in the industry call this a polishing finger. It's basically used to make the inside of the ring super smooth. I then remove the lap and replace it with this polishing brush. The brush does a really good job at polishing up those places that are hard to reach, especially down near the base of the head. To cap off the polishing process, I use this fine, final wheel. I'll add some polishing rouge and then run the ring through the wheel at all different angles and directions. This wheel is soft enough to run it right over the prongs. You don't want a wheel that's too hard because you don't want to wear the gold down. This wheel does a perfect job at brightening up the entire ring. I'm not gonna lie, I love getting my hands dirty. This means the project's almost done, and you can really see how beautiful everything is. It's so incredibly satisfying to see the fruition of your hard work. But I digress. We still have more to do. Obviously, we're gonna need to clean that rouge off the rings, so I drop it in my ultrasonic cleaner. After it's run for some minutes, it's time to steam the rings. Last but not least is rhodium plating. I seriously promise this is the last step. This is an electroplating process. Basically what we're doing here is we are electroplating rhodium on top of the white gold ring. Many traditional white gold alloys will start to yellow after a while. Rhodium is great because it creates an extra white barrier on the surface of the ring. And there you have it, 2 completely restored rings, the engagement ring and the wedding band, separated, sized larger, the stones tightened, everything polished up and rhodium plated. I'm so excited for this mother to get her rings back. After 2 years of not wearing these rings, they're finally going to be back where they belong. This is officially the longest video I've ever made, and if you've stuck with me this whole time, I thank you. You might be able to tell I've lost my voice, so excuse me while I go get some tea with honey.